Hey everyone, welcome back to the deep dive. We're going to be jumping into something pretty crucial today. Mental well-being.
Hmm.
And, especially when we're facing tough stuff like depression, it can feel really overwhelming.
Absolutely. It really can.
But we've gathered a whole bunch of resources, articles, podcasts, even some insights from a health organization, all aimed at giving us practical tools and strategies for navigating this complex world of, well, our minds.
It's kind of like we're building a mental well-being toolkit together, right?
I like that, a mental well-being toolkit. So where do we even start?
Well, I think it's always good to get a clear understanding of what we're dealing with. Let's talk about depression. It's more than just feeling a bit down every now and then.
Right. It's not just the blues. We're
Yeah.
talking about a mood disorder that can have a real impact on your life.
Exactly. And one of the things we found really interesting in our research is that depression can manifest in so many different ways. It's not the same for everyone.
For sure. Like some people experience intense sadness, a kind of crushing hopelessness, while others might feel more irritable or angry.
Right. And then there are the physical symptoms too.
Oh yeah, those can be really tough. Things like losing interest in things you used to love, feeling exhausted all the time, having trouble focusing, or even struggling to sleep.
It's important to remember that depression isn't something you just snap out of. There's a lot going on beneath the surface.
Absolutely. And our sources delved into some of the potential causes, which, are super complex.
Yeah, we saw things like family history playing a role, early childhood experiences, even differences in brain structure, and sometimes medical conditions can contribute too.
It really highlights how important it is to seek professional help if you're experiencing these kinds of persistent symptoms.
Completely agree. Reaching out to a mental health professional is often the most important first step.
But what's also really cool is that there's this whole world of other support systems emerging, like podcasts.
Podcasts are amazing, aren't they? I mean, think about it. You can literally have experts and people with lived experience talking directly to you whenever you need it.
Exactly. And we found this fantastic list of podcasts specifically for people dealing with depression and other mental health challenges.
This list is so diverse, too. It really shows that there's something out there for everyone. Like, there's the Self Work podcast. It's hosted by a psychologist who's been practicing for over 25 years, and it covers, well, pretty much everything: loneliness, depression, anxiety, you name it.
And then there's On Purpose with Jay Shetty, which
Hmm.
focuses more on, mindset, changing your perspective, finding more meaning in life, that kind of thing.
And if anxiety is your main struggle, there's Owning It, the anxiety podcast, which gets really specific about strategies for understanding and managing anxiety.
It's pretty incredible how targeted these podcasts can be.
And then there's one that caught my eye because it uses humor to address depression: The Hilarious World of Depression. It's hosted by John Moe, and he talks to all sorts of people, a lot of comedians, about their experiences with depression.
I've heard that one's really popular.
Yeah.
I guess finding the lighter side of things, even with something as serious as depression, can be really helpful.
It definitely can. Laughter is powerful medicine. It can help us feel less alone, more connected to others who get it.
Another one that stood out was Feeling Good Podcast with Dr. David Burns. He's got a strong medical background in both psychiatry and neurology.
So he's bringing a lot of scientific weight to the table.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he really focuses on building self-esteem and using cognitive behavioral therapy techniques, or CBT. We'll dive into that a bit later, but it's basically a way to change your thought patterns and behaviors.
And there were even more niche podcasts on the list, like The Self-Love Fix, which, as the name suggests, is all about cultivating self-compassion.
Which is so important. We can be so hard on ourselves sometimes.
And there's the Depression Files podcast, which is specifically for men. It acknowledges that there can be a lot of stigma and societal pressure for men to keep their struggles bottled up.
Then we have the Brain Warriors Way podcast, which takes a fascinating approach by looking at how our brains work. It's hosted by Dr. Daniel and Tana MN.
Fascinating, right? Understanding the science behind our emotions and behaviors can be really empowering.
And then there's Tell Me What You're Proud Of. This one features recorded therapy sessions with Dr. Maggie Perry, covering anxiety, OCD, depression, and stress.
Wow, so it's like getting a glimpse into real therapy conversations.
And finally, there's Griefcast, which offers a space for exploring and processing grief, which is, a whole other dimension of mental well-being.
The sheer variety of these podcasts really highlights something crucial. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to mental health.
Totally agree. It's about finding what resonates with you, what feels helpful for your individual needs.
And one thing our sources made super clear: While podcasts can be amazingly supportive, they're not a substitute for professional therapy.
Right. It's important to remember that if you're really struggling, reaching out to a qualified professional is essential. But let's go back to the Feeling Good podcast and CBT for a moment. It seems like a really popular approach these days.
It is, and they talk a lot about a specific type of CBT called TEAM-CBT.
Team-CBT. Okay. What's so special about that?
Well, from what we gathered, TEAM-CBT is a framework that's built on 4 key components.
4 components. All right, lay it on me.
So there's testing, which means regularly measuring your progress to see what's working and what's not.
That makes sense. Kind of like keeping track of your mental well-being.
Exactly. Then there's empathy, which is all about building a warm and supportive relationship between the therapist and the client.
Okay, so it's not just about techniques, it's about the connection too.
Absolutely. The third component is assessment of resistance.
Resistance, like being resistant to therapy.
It can be, but it's more about understanding any reluctance to change. Sometimes we hold on to certain thoughts or behaviors even if they're not helpful.
I can definitely see that happening. We get stuck in our way.
Exactly. So by acknowledging and exploring that resistance, you can start to work through it. And then the final component is methods, which is where all the different CBT techniques come in.
Methods. Okay, so what kind of techniques are we talking about here?
Well, there are tons, apparently over 140 different techniques, but one they highlighted was called the hidden emotion technique.
Hidden emotion technique. Sounds kind of mysterious.
A little bit. Basically, it's about digging a little deeper to uncover feelings that we might not even be aware of.
Like what?
Well, they gave an example of someone whose anxiety about death was actually tied to underlying resentment about their daily schedule.
Well, that's pretty intense.
Right. But it shows how sometimes our surface emotions are masking something deeper. And once you address that hidden emotion, the anxiety or whatever else you're experiencing might just disappear.
That's amazing. So it's like peeling back the layers of an onion, right? Getting to the core of what's really going on.
Exactly. And another key aspect of CBT is addressing rumination. You know that feeling of being stuck in a loop of negative thoughts?
Oh, I know it well. It's like a broken record in your head.
Exactly. And it can be incredibly draining. So TEAM-CBT suggests using a step-by-step approach that includes things like motivational techniques and something called paradoxical cost-benefit analysis.
Paradoxical cost-benefit analysis.
That's a mouthful.
It is, but it's actually quite interesting. It involves looking at your negative thoughts or behaviors and figuring out what you might be getting out of them, even if it seems counterintuitive.
So, like, there's some kind of hidden benefit to thinking negatively.
Well, not a benefit exactly, but maybe a perceived payoff. For example, someone might constantly ruminate about past mistakes. And yeah, it feels terrible, but maybe they feel like it's helping them avoid making the same mistakes again, or maybe it's a way of punishing themselves. Ah, I see. So by understanding those underlying motivations, you can start to address them in a more constructive way.
Exactly. And this is where the team approach comes in. It helps you uncover those hidden motivations with empathy and without judgment.
Makes sense. We also saw an episode of the Feeling Good podcast where a listener, Ali, brought up a really sensitive topic: how religious beliefs can sometimes contribute to feelings of anxiety and guilt.
It's such an important conversation to have. Our beliefs, whatever they may be, can have a huge impact on our mental well-being.
Ali was sharing their struggle with conflicting desires and the fear of not living up to their religious teachings. It sounded really painful.
And I think the fact that the podcast tackled such a personal and potentially controversial issue shows how broadly applicable CBT principles can be. It's not just for, everyday worries. It can help us navigate really deep existential questions, too.
Another episode focused on overcoming porn addiction. They talked about using team therapy to understand both the psychological and physiological aspects of addiction.
That's really interesting. Addiction is so often viewed purely as a willpower issue, but it's clearly much more complex than that.
They even mentioned something called the triple paradox as a way to boost motivation and recovery.
Triple paradox, huh? What's that all about?
To be honest, I'm not entirely sure. It sounds like it involves exploring 3 seemingly contradictory ideas related to addiction.
Maybe something like acknowledging the initial pleasure of the addiction, but also the eventual pain it causes. And then maybe the discomfort of withdrawal versus the long-term freedom of recovery.
It sounds like a way of holding those opposing forces in your mind at the same time.
Exactly. And perhaps by doing so, it helps you tap into a deeper sense of motivation for change. It's like, okay, I see the whole picture now, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and I'm choosing this path.
Powerful stuff. And then there was this episode all about the, quote, magic of TEAM-CBT. They really broke it down into those 4 components we talked about earlier: testing, empathy, assessment of resistance, and methods.
It's a really clear and concise way of understanding CBT. It's not some mystical process, it's a structured system with concrete tools and techniques.
The emphasis on testing and measuring progress is particularly helpful, I think. It gives you tangible evidence of whether or not what you're doing is actually working.
For sure. Seeing those positive changes, even small ones, can be incredibly motivating.
Now, shifting gears a little bit, our research also led us to some really important insights about the growing need for mental health support on college campuses.
It's a huge issue, isn't it? The demand for mental health services among college students has been skyrocketing.
Our sources said there's been a doubling in the number of students diagnosed with anxiety and depression just in the last 10 years, and therapy use has increased at a similar rate.
It's pretty clear that mental health is a major concern for students these days.
And it's even being cited as a primary reason why some students consider leaving school altogether.
Which makes perfect sense, right? If you're struggling mentally, it's going to impact every aspect of your life, including your studies.
Absolutely. It's all interconnected. And unfortunately, it seems like a lot of campus counseling services are struggling to keep up with the demand.
We saw reports of staffing shortages, long wait lists for appointments, and even a lack of diversity in the types of support offered.
That's really concerning. It's raising serious questions about how accessible and inclusive these services actually are.
Right, because if a student finally gets the courage to seek help, but then faces all these barriers, it can be incredibly discouraging. They might just give up and not try again.
That's a real lost opportunity for crucial support.
One of the stats we came across was that 60% of college students have a diagnosable behavioral health condition, and over 75% said that their mental health negatively impacts their academic performance.
Those are huge numbers. It's clearly a widespread issue.
And it's not just about the logistical barriers, there's also the issue of mental health literacy.
Meaning?
Well, do students even understand what mental health conditions are? Do they know the signs and symptoms? Do they know where to go for help?
It's a good point. We can't assume everyone has that knowledge.
And then there's the stigma surrounding mental health, which can be incredibly powerful, especially in a high-pressure environment like college.
Stigma can make people feel ashamed or afraid to reach out for help.
Exactly. They might worry about being judged or treated differently. And what's even more worrying is that half of the students who end up dropping out of college due to mental health issues never even use the campus services.
Wow, so they're struggling in silence.
It really highlights the need for better outreach and awareness. Students need to know that support is available and that it's okay to ask for help.
One of the ideas our sources suggested was embedding mental health resources into the platforms that students already use regularly,
That's a clever approach.
like integrating it into their online learning platforms or their student portals. The idea is to make well-being a more visible and normalized part of the college experience.
I love that. It's about meeting students where they are, making it easier for them to access support without having to jump through hoops.
And it also helps to create a culture where talking about mental health is less taboo, more accepted.
Our sources also emphasize that college campuses are incredibly diverse, so mental health services need to be equally diverse and inclusive.
Absolutely. A one-size-fits-all approach just won't cut it.
They need to consider cultural differences, language barriers, different sexual orientations, socioeconomic backgrounds, all of it. It's about creating a truly welcoming and supportive environment for every student.
It sounds like the future of mental health support on campuses involves a combination of traditional counseling with newer approaches, like using technology and partnering with external mental health providers.
It's about expanding the options, making sure there's a range of services available to meet the unique needs of each student.
Now, let's shift gears again and talk about ways to proactively take care of our mental well-being in our everyday lives. We found this great perspective from Queensland Health that defined mental well-being really simply: feeling good and doing well.
I love that definition. It's so straightforward and positive. It's not just about the absence of mental illness, it's about actively cultivating well-being.
And they laid out these 6 building blocks for improving mental well-being, which I thought was super helpful.
6 building blocks. Okay, let's hear them.
The first one is getting healthy, which is all about taking care of our physical health. You know, things like eating nutritious food, getting enough exercise, sleeping well, and staying hydrated.
All the basics, but so important. It's easy to let those things slip when we're feeling stressed or overwhelmed.
They shared some interesting facts, too, like how our brains are 75% water. That really drove home the importance of staying hydrated.
And they highlighted the role of healthy fats, too. Our brains need those essential fatty acids to function properly.
So load up on those omega-3s from oily fish, nuts, and seeds.
And they also talked about gut health and the connection between our gut and our brain.
It's fascinating how interconnected everything is.
They recommended incorporating probiotics into our diet to support gut health, which in turn can benefit our mental well-being.
Makes you think twice about what you're putting into your body.
It really does. And within that getting healthy block, they also suggested a simple relaxation technique, progressive muscle relaxation.
Oh, I've heard of that. It's where you tense and release different muscle groups, right?
Exactly.
Right.
And they combined it with mindful breathing, inhaling for a count of 4, pausing for 3, and exhaling for 4. It's a quick and easy way to calm your nervous system.
I love that it's something you can do anywhere, anytime.
They also talked about our negativity bias, which is that tendency we have to focus more on the negative stuff than the positive. It's kind of like our brains are wired for negativity.
It's true. Bad news always seems to stick with us longer than good news.
So they suggest making a conscious effort to notice and appreciate the positive things in our lives. It's about actively shifting our focus.
It sounds a bit like training your brain to be more optimistic.
Exactly. And it can have a really big impact on our overall mood and outlook.
The second building block is continuous learning, which is all about keeping our brains active and engaged.
Learning new things, challenging ourselves mentally, that sort of thing.
Exactly. It could be anything from taking a class to learning a new language to picking up a new hobby.
As long as it stretches your mind and keeps you curious.
The other building blocks are equally important. Showing kindness through acts of generosity, connecting more with the people around us, taking notice by practicing mindfulness and being present, and embracing nature by spending time outdoors.
They really paint a holistic picture of well-being, don't they? It's not just about what's going on in our heads. It's about how we interact with the world around us.
Now let's talk about creating kinder cultures, particularly in the workplace. We found some really insightful perspectives from David Beeney, who's very open about his own mental health challenges.
I really appreciate his authenticity. It makes his message all the more powerful.
He talked about how there's still a lot of stigma surrounding mental health in professional settings.
That wall of silence he described, where people are afraid to talk openly about their struggles.
And he made this really interesting comparison between how we respond to physical health issues versus mental health issues. Like, if someone breaks their leg, we rush to offer help and support. But if someone's struggling with depression, we often don't know what to say or do.
And he pointed out that even the language we use can be a barrier. Like directly asking someone, "I'm worried about your mental health," can feel really intrusive or even accusatory.
It can come across as though you're labeling them as mentally ill, which can be really off-putting.
Exactly. So he suggested focusing on simpler check-ins, like asking, "How are you feeling today on a scale of 1 to 10?"
That's much less intimidating and more likely to open up a conversation.
And he also highlighted the business case for creating kinder workplace cultures. He cited research showing that companies with supportive environments see a 12% increase in productivity.
So it's not just about being nice, it's about creating a more effective and engaged workforce.
He talked about the importance of leaders setting the tone from the top, openly prioritizing well-being, and even sharing their own vulnerabilities.
That kind of authenticity can really trickle down and create a more open and accepting culture throughout the organization.
He also emphasized the role of line managers in making employees feel valued and supported. Often, they're the ones who are closest to the day-to-day experiences of their team members.
Beanie shared his own experience of working through grief after his mother's death. It was really powerful to hear him talk about how he found strength and purpose in his work during such a difficult time.
It shows that you can be going through really tough stuff personally and still be a valuable contributor.
His biggest takeaway was the importance of self-compassion, that idea of accepting that it's okay not to be okay.
It's about recognizing that we're all human, we all make mistakes, and we all have difficult experiences, and it's about treating ourselves with the same kindness and understanding that we would offer a friend.
That message really resonated with me. It's so easy to be hard on ourselves, but we need to learn to be more forgiving and supportive.
Absolutely. And building on that foundation of self-compassion, our sources also talked about the importance of sleep and social support in maintaining our mental well-being.
Sleep is so crucial, isn't it? It's when our bodies and minds can truly rest and recharge.
Most adults need around 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep per night. And if we don't get enough, it can really impact our mood, our energy levels, and our ability to cope with stress.
And then there's social support. Having a strong network of friends, family, or even support groups can make a world of difference.
It's about having people you can turn to when you're struggling, people who will listen without judgment and offer encouragement and support.
Connection is so vital for our well-being. It helps us feel less alone, less isolated.
Now, we need to talk about a more modern challenge that a lot of us are facing these days: doom scrolling.
Doom scrolling, yes. That endless scrolling through negative news and social media that can leave you feeling anxious and depressed.
It's so easy to get sucked into that vortex of negativity, especially with our phones always within reach.
One of the podcasts we listened to highlighted that doom scrolling can be especially harmful for people with bipolar disorder, as it can exacerbate their symptoms.
Makes sense, given the mood swings and emotional sensitivity that are part of bipolar disorder.
It's like throwing fuel on the fire.
Exactly. And even for people without bipolar disorder, doom scrolling can have a negative impact on our mood and outlook. We start to believe that the world is a terrible place and that things are only getting worse.
It can distort our perception of reality.
And then there's the social comparison aspect of social media. Seeing other people's seemingly perfect lives can make us feel inadequate or envious.
It's that classic fear of missing out, or FOMO.
It can be really tough to resist, but
Well,
it's so important to be mindful of how much time we're spending on social media and what kind of content we're consuming.
The podcast episode we listened to offered some great strategies for limiting doom scrolling. Things like being more intentional about our social media use, maybe even deleting those apps from our phones.
Or at least moving them off our home screen so they're not constantly tempting us.
And they suggested unfollowing or unfriending accounts that consistently make us feel bad. It's about curating our online environment to be more positive and supportive.
And they talked about choosing alternative activities when we feel that urge to doom scroll, like going for a walk, reading a book, listening to music, anything that takes us out of that negative headspace.
I love their idea of identifying our tubby nuggets.
Read nuggets.
Yeah, it's like those things that bring us comfort and joy. It could be a favorite TV show, a funny meme, a beloved pet, anything that makes us feel good.
I love that. We all need our tubby nuggets, especially when we're feeling down.
And it's not just about things, it's about people too. Reach out to those supportive friends and family members who lift you up. They're your human tubby nuggets.
I like that even better, human tubby nuggets.
The key takeaway here is to be more aware of our triggers and to consciously choose healthier ways to spend our time and energy. It's about protecting our mental well-being in the digital age.
Last but not least, our deep dive led us to this Reddit thread where people were sharing their favorite podcasts for getting through tough times.
I love that. It's like crowdsourcing comfort and inspiration.
The recommendations were all over the map, which is great. It shows that there's something out there for everyone, no matter what your taste is.
There were some really interesting ones, like Existential Stoic, which is all about applying Stoic philosophy to modern life.
For those who are more philosophically inclined.
And then there's the classic This American Life, which features these incredibly moving and thought-provoking stories from real people.
Always a good listen.
And of course, there were some purely for laughs options, like My Dad Wrote a Porno and Go Help Yourself. Sometimes you just need a good laugh to lift your spirits.
Laughter is the best medicine, as they say.
There were also some darker humor options, like That Chapter, which covers true crime but with a comedic twist.
Some people find that kind of gallows humor really cathartic.
And for the science lovers out there, there's Neil deGrasse Tyson's Star Talk, which is all about the wonders of the universe.
A great way to gain some perspective and realize how small our problems really are in the grand scheme of things.
Other recommendations included Confessions of the Idiots, which is basically people reading ridiculous confessions from Reddit.
Always good for a laugh.
And there's Just Breakup, which offers relationship advice with a lot of heart and humor.
Perfect for those navigating the ups and downs of love.
And then there's Blind Boy, which is hosted by this Irish comedian and musician. It's kind of hard to describe, but it's really funny and thought-provoking.
I've heard good things about that one.
And for those who like to explore the darker side of things, there's Terrible Thanks for Asking and Death, Sex, and Money.
Both of those podcasts tackle really difficult topics with a lot of sensitivity and compassion.
There were so many more recommendations. Philosophize This for philosophy buffs, Hardcore History for history lovers, Last Podcast on the Left for true crime fans. The list goes on and on.
It's a great reminder that there's this whole world of podcasts out there waiting to be discovered.
And when you're going through a tough time, finding a podcast that resonates with you can feel like finding a lifeline. It's like having a friend in your ear, offering support, encouragement, or just a welcome distraction.
It's amazing how powerful audio can be, how it can connect us even when we feel alone.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of mental well-being, I hope you're walking away with a sense of hope and empowerment.
There are so many resources available, so many different paths you can take. It's about finding what works for you.
We encourage you to think about all the tools and strategies we've discussed today, from therapy and CBT to podcasts and self-care practices. It's about building your own personalized mental well-being toolkit.
And remember, you're not alone in this journey. There are people who care about you, and there's help available if you need it.
And to leave you with one final thought, what's one small actionable step you can take in the next 24 hours to nurture your own mental well-being or to support someone else's? It doesn't have to be a huge gesture, just a small act of kindness towards yourself or something you love.
Take care of yourselves out there, and we'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.
See you then.